today I'm going to be talking about how I created my Sailor Pluto staff. I was super excited to create this. This was my first really big build, and it was also a little nerve-wracking, but I did get through it, and I created something that I absolutely love. It is slightly still a work in progress, which I will have some after notes at the end of this video to talk about how I might be altering it a little bit. But hopefully this will help you all create what you're looking for. I had a hard time in the research stage as I couldn't find a tutorial that really worked for what I needed to do. And that is one, it had to be budget friendly. I didn't have a whole lot left in my budget to create this prop. I did have some PVC pipe, but that was really it. So I had to find some other things to help me. And then the second thing that it needed to be able to do was I needed to be able to disassemble it. And that was probably the hardest part. But I did figure that out, and hopefully this will help you in the future. Let's get started. Alright, so I started off my whole project by designing my staff. This is just a rough sketch of what I kind of want it to look like. There are some pieces missing to it. I just wanted to do it really quick so I kind of had an idea of what I was doing. This is based off of some of the reference photos that I looked at before I even started creating the staff. I wanted this staff to be about 5'8". I am only like 5'4 3/4. With my heels on, I'm about 5'6". So I didn't want it too much taller than me, especially since I'm going to be carrying this around the convention, on top of the fact that this also needs to be able to fit into my suitcase. So I converted the height of the staff into inches. This made it much easier to divide amongst the different pieces. So with this design, the little ball points, the two that are in the middle, those are actually going to be connector pieces. Now, with this design, what I wanted to be able to do was disassemble it. You have to take into consideration that you are putting this into a connector. I was losing about 5/8 of an inch, so I had to add that. The middle segment has a connector at the top and a connector at the bottom, so I have to add that to my total of 19. So when I measured out my staff, that would end up being 20 inches and a half. Now that you have all your materials and you've designed your staff, it is time to get started. So I started by cutting the actual PVC pipe. So I took a measuring tape and I measured out the length that I needed, and of course marked it. Use a marker. And you might want to use a permanent marker, because when I used an actual marker, it started to kind of run and bleed. It worked, but it definitely wasn't as clean as it could be. So I didn't cut on camera because I was really scared about trying to cut on camera because I had never used a handsaw before like this, and I was really nervous about cutting my finger off or something. I didn't do anything. I was really safe, and I didn't get hurt at all. There was no even reason to worry, but it was better safe than sorry. I didn't trust myself doing this. So if you don't trust yourself, you could always try and get somebody else to cut it. Or if you're at a hardware store, a lot of those places have somebody that will cut it for you if you already know what lengths that you need them. But yes, so take those over and cut them, and be extremely careful, guys, please. Once I finished cutting the PVC pipe, I did attach it to the connectors and kind of get an idea of how tall it was. I wanted to make sure that the fit was still good, and this is what the height looks like without the heart on top. It's just short of me, which was, I thought, a great height. All right, it got a little chilly, so I threw a jacket on. So to make the heart part of the staff, I used this thick insulation foam. Again, you can get this from most hardware stores. Okay, so I did a quick sketch of what I wanted half of the heart to look like, and used the edge of the paper to create that like perfect edge. I only did half of this paper so that way I could try and get this as identical as possible, since I didn't print this out. I knew that I wanted the heart to be about 11 inches tall, and that's the size of a normal paper that you would use for your printer. Anyways, so once you have this sketch done, you can lay it down on the insulation foam, and use a little bit of tape to hold it there so that way it doesn't shift or move as you're cutting. And then I used my box cutter to trace out the design. Unfortunately, the box cutter is actually too short to cut all the way through, so I ended up using my saw again to cut through everything. But before you do that, lay it down, trace it out with your box cutter, and then flip it. By this point, your little template will be cut out of your paper. So then just take that template and flip it, and match it up with what you already cut, and then tape it down in like certain spots. I taped them really close to the edges where they met, so that way I could trace it out again with a box cutter and create a pretty much perfect heart. It was pretty symmetrical, which was great, which is exactly what I wanted it. Again, like I said, once I traced it all out with the box cutter, I did have to use the saw to cut it, to get it cut all the way through. So again, be extremely careful when you're using this. If you have somebody who's really good with a saw, I would probably ask them to do it. That way you don't have to worry about hurting yourself. Be very careful at the top where the smaller heart is. I basically had to poke a hole through and then cut. So be very, very careful, guys. Okay, so this is the finished heart. It does need to be sanded a little bit. So once this is all cut out, I did take some sandpaper and I sanded it down. This is prior to me realizing that I had an electric sander, and that probably would have made things so much easier. But yeah. Okay, so I sanded the whole thing. It's not as smooth as I'd hope. Anyways, I'm pointing out that I have a few cracks. That is why I bought this spackle. Oh, gosh. This was a few hours in, so I was pretty exhausted, and I forgot to record the making of the two pieces that are sticking out at the bottom of the heart with the little two balls. Okay, so for the little extensions that come out off the heart, what I did was, in order to kind of conserve the insulation foam, because I am looking to probably use this on another project, the inside part of the heart that I cut out was a nice big heart. So what I did was I cut it down the middle and then made either side of these little cutouts. I drew little circles and sketched all that out. Then once I was done, I just kind of carved out a little bit in between the two bowls, so that way it would create a little more depth and give it a little more dimension. Okay, so for the bottom part of the heart where the ornament sticks onto, my original plan was to try and stick the PVC pipe through that. I did cut it in half, kind of rounded cuts, so that way the PVC pipe would fit in there like nicely and like snugly, and then the ornament would just kind of sit on top. That is not actually what ended up happening. The ornament is actually supposed to hold the heart piece at the top, so I did end up needing to carve this even more later, because I am dumb and totally forgot to look at reference photos. I think this was at like 2 a.m. Once that was all done, I took my dry X and I started to try and fill in some of the holes, make it a little more smooth. If I would have thought about the fact that I had a sander, or if you have a Dremel, you can make this step completely painless and only fill in like small cracks if you need to. But yeah, mine was much more painful, guys, because I don't have all the tools that I need, or didn't remember that I had certain tools that I could have used. So watch my pain, guys, watch my pain. Another tidbit: do not do this less than 24 hours before you go to, you're traveling or you're going to a con. Spackling takes a long time to dry. And I, again, am stupid and totally forgot that it takes forever to dry. And yeah, so by the time it was time to sand and paint and things like that, parts of the spackling were not dry. Some of it was, because I did a thin enough layer, but there was other parts where I was trying to fill in too much and it was still really wet by the time I went to go do this. So if you are gonna do this the way I'm doing it, make sure you give yourself more time for it to dry properly, or at least give yourself time to do layers, because that's actually how you should use spackling. And again, I am dumb and I was like, oh, it's not that big of a hole, and kept going. But yes, give yourself time, please. Don't be like me. Do not be like me. Do not do this the night before. I decided to move on to the key part of the key, like the key staff, and I just kind of created a really quick stencil using a ruler, and cut those out. So I cut these out, and then I realized they were too thick and compared to the staff, and I didn't like that. So I cut them in half. So I ended up only cutting one of them in half and using that for the key, and it worked out perfectly. They were perfect size, being cut in half. Alright. once I finished spackling that, and then I set those aside to dry, I decided to tackle the ball joints that were going to be on the connectors. I came up with an idea of stacking 2 of the insulation foam, so I created 2 donuts for each connector, which was a pain. And I made them larger than I originally wanted them. And then this is where it got interesting. In order to cut the hole in the middle too, by the way, take the connector and place it on top and just kind of push very gently into it to create a little indentation. Then take your box cutter and just cut into it. Do not use your saw for this point because it's very small. You're just gonna literally have to keep carving out holes. Alright, so to create the ball, like I said, use the connector to kind of create a small indentation on the circle and then cut that out. Use your box cutter to slowly carve out that shape. Do not use like the saw or anything like that because you might make it too large and then it's not going to fit onto the connector very well. I put a small bit of hot glue close to the center of where the connector was, and then even inserted the connector inside and then stuck that onto my PVC pipe to hold it in place while I started to sand. At this point, I remembered that I had a power sander, which would have been way handy in the beginning. So at this point, I remembered that I had a power sander, and I used that to like kind of slowly like sand off the edges and sand it to make it a little more ball-like, and the shape came out so nice and the ball came out so much smoother than any of the other pieces of my project. So this is why I've said a million times over, if you have a sander or a Dremel, use it. It'll make it look so much nicer. It looks so pretty, and I had a lot of fun sanding this. I just kind of sat in front of my TV and sanded away. Again, don't do this. Don't be like me. Do it in like a garage or something, but it's like extremely hot here in Florida, so garage is just like not an option. I just made sure that I covered the furniture that was nearby and then vacuumed very, very well the next day. Okay, so for the very top part, my initial idea was to take a cardboard box and cut it into like almost like a flower type thing. The bottom would be square and then the top would come up like little petals, and then I would wrap that around the base and then kind of roll it. This did not work. I tried several different versions of it and it didn't work. So what I ended up having to do was take some of the insulation foam and I made like a trapezoid type shape, and I did 3 of them and I stacked them together, and then I cut out where the PVC pipe would go. Originally, I sanded that a little bit. This was like the last thing I did, and I realized that I was running out of time. So I did this very quickly, and I actually hated it. It was so blocky, and it just didn't look right, and I was just angry with myself because I had worked so hard on this staff, and this one piece was making me very upset, and I didn't like it. While I was on the train, I came up with a new idea to fix this, and I'll show you some of the pictures of that because I unfortunately did not record that portion. I was going to sand it again, and this time make the sanding more like vase shaped, and that was just kind of almost like a base for the cardboard to stick onto. Then take the cardboard that I originally thought I was going to use and made strips that were squared off at the bottom and then rounded at top to look more like petals. And I just did individual strips and cut those out and spray painted them silver, and then hot glued each strip onto the foam. Unfortunately, when I was doing this, it wasn't staying, so I took painter's tape and wrapped the bottom really nicely, and then did one more round closer towards the top, and then spray painted that silver as well, so it all blended in together and it didn't look like different pieces. And then the very top where the petal-esque part is near the ornament, I just took like a paintbrush and rolled it, so it rolled and had like this cute like little like rolled look to it. It came out really pretty. All right, so here are some afterthoughts. These I'm going to go into a little bit about the budget as well as some of the things that I personally would do differently. Hopefully it'll help you with your next project. So when it comes to the budget, I only think I had about like $12 to spend on this whole project. And honestly, I probably could have been around that number had I needed to buy every single item that was on the material list. The only things that I actually ended up having to purchase because I didn't already own them was the connectors for the PVC pipe, the spray paint, and the insulation foam. The insulation foam I got at Home Depot. It was only about $5. Then the spray paint I got from Walmart. That was only like $3, and then the connectors were about 90 cents each. So I only needed, I believe I bought 4 just to be safe. And then also the end cap was also like 90 or 50 cents or something like that. And again, those you can all get from the hardware store. Had I needed to buy the PVC pipe and Mod Podge, I probably still could have came in around $12. I think it would probably have been closer to $15. But PVC pipe is pretty inexpensive. You can get that again at any hardware store. Mod Podge, you can get that at Walmart, online like Amazon or anything like that, which is really cool. It's really easy to get, and I always get like a bigger container because I know I'm gonna end up using it for all sorts of projects. So it's a great thing to have. Now, if I would have had to buy a saw or something to cut the PVC pipe, I probably would have had to end up spending way more. But the saw was something that I had at the house. It was like a daily household thing. Same with the power sander. That was, again, something that we just own at our house because we use it for other projects. All right, so when it comes to what I would do differently, there is quite a few things that I would do a little differently next time I create this or create something like this. And the number one thing that I would definitely do differently is I would invest in a rotary tool. Sorry, daydreaming. Rotary tool. A rotary tool would have helped create a lot smoother finish. When it came time to create the little balls, I could have created like a more symmetrical ball, like just the finer sanding tool, I would have been able to get it. Same goes with the heart. I would have been able to round it off more instead of keeping it more of a blocky heart. This sandpaper was just kind of like, if without even like the power sander, the sander wasn't really helping all that much. So definitely invest in a rotary tool. The second thing I would have invested in is the utility knife. It's really inexpensive. Right now, all I have is the box cutter, and it only extends like a little bit, whereas a utility knife, it'll extend a lot further. The blade's a lot longer. So it would have made cutting through all of those pieces a lot easier. I did find a workaround in the end, but at first I was trying to cut it with the box cutter, and it just, it was a nightmare. But I made it through, so that's all that counts. And I did learn a few things. I learned that spray paint eats insulation foam. I didn't know that, but now I do. The more you know. I'm sure somebody out there is looking at this video going, really, you didn't know that? Like, you didn't realize that it would do? No, I didn't. I don't work with this stuff. I've never done it before. I don't know. But I do now, and that's okay. So if you are going to use spray paint, just seal it. That's all you got to do. I sealed mine, as you saw, with the Mod Podge, and it worked perfectly. I just did one coat, and it was perfectly fine. Didn't eat through anything. So that was great. The other thing I would invest in is probably a different type of glue. I did have an issue at the very end of the day. I disassembled the staff to put into my bag as I was walking back to my car, which, safety, guys, I had a weapon. No, just kidding. Don't use it. It was only for protection, just in case. But I'm gonna cut that out. But so I disassembled the staff and put it in my tote to help me carry it back to the car because I was just dead tired and just did not want to carry it anymore. So I stuffed it in my tote, and I was almost to my car. And I kind of did like a slow little jog across the street just to make it across in time. And the staff fell out of my bag. And it hit the ground, and the heart part broke. Thankfully, it broke at the seams where it was held together with hot glue. So it is fixable. But it also gives me the opportunity to work on it a little bit more because I do want to try and fix it a little bit. Also, if I had a larger budget, one of the things I would definitely look into is for the orbs, finding a different way to do them. Maybe even doing like styrofoam balls and cutting those out so that way they're more circular and I didn't have to sand them at all. I didn't have any extra like money at the end, so it wasn't something. I was just trying to use the insulation foam for as much as possible. Same goes for the little orbs that were up towards the top, the little balls that were in between the two little hearts at the top. Investing in some styrofoam, different size styrofoam balls probably would have made the process 10 times easier. And my final thing was the vase shape. I did end up using cardboard and some tape to hold it together. So I kind of want to completely rework that and create a new way of doing that. I haven't quite figured out what I want to do, but if I ever do it, I will let you all know. Just follow my Instagram, and I'm sure I will put any updates to my staff on there. For now, though, that is all the afterthoughts I got. That is all for my Sailor Pluto staff. That is all for my Sailor Pluto staff tutorial. I hope you all found it helpful or maybe even a little inspirational. I know I personally learned a lot from making this and hope to use that into the future, and I hope it helps you as well. When I created these tutorials, I know that my technique isn't perfect and I'm still learning myself, but I do want to show people that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to start somewhere. This was my first really big build for a prop, and I didn't quite know what I was doing. So I just want people to who want to start cosplaying to see that we all start somewhere, and it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from those and you keep moving forward. But yeah, so and just hopefully you make something bigger and better next time. That's all you can hope for. But as for me, that is all. I hope you liked this video. If you did, or if you just like my face, please hit the thumbs up button. If you want to see more videos like this or watch me go on my cosplay journey, please feel free to subscribe, and don't forget to hit the little bell so you get notified when I make a new video. Well, that is all from me. Have a great day, everybody. Love you. And that's what I'm here for, guys. Making mistakes so you don't have to.